Therefore, I'm going to go ahead and call this evening's meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Florence to order. First item on this evening's agenda is approval of the minutes of the January meeting. Minutes have been submitted to members of the board in ample time to review. Are there any amendments or motions to those minutes? There being none, do we have a motion to approve?
I made the motion to approve.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. The minutes are approved. Next item on this evening's agenda is BZA hearing number 2024-02. It's a request for variance from the size restrictions for an accessory structures on a residential parcel. Location is 200 South Franklin Drive, tax map number 90062-09-008. Owner of record is Brian and Teresa, and I want to make sure I pronounce this correctly, Inman. All right. Applicant is Brian and Teresa Inman. And zoning district is NC 6.1. The board will now hear from city staff.
Good evening. This parcel is located on the corner of Franklin Drive and King Avenue. That's on the wrong one. Gregg Avenue. Here we go. Gregg Avenue and Franklin Drive. It's a long, narrow parcel. The house faces on Gregg, but the majority of the lot is visible from Franklin Drive. And it is zoned NC 6.1, which is a single-family residential district. Here's a site plan. There are 4 accessory structures currently on the parcel. The applicant wishes to remove those 4 and replace it with a new combined garage, detached garage and storage building, which would be about 1,200 square feet, which is a little bit over the requirement or the permitted amount, but would be roughly the same as what is being removed. And in addition, it will be clad to match the house, which is what the ordinance requires. So it'll also have white siding and the asphalt shingle roof. It does meet the setbacks, which are 5 feet from the interior side property line and a minimum of 10 feet from the rear. And as you can see, it's 20 from the rear, so it will meet those setbacks as well. So the only thing that he needs a variance for on this one is the size. These are some elevations of the building. And then these are some existing site photos of the existing conditions. And that tent structure and the garage will be removed, as well as the building on the lower right there as well. So, but roughly where that is roughly where the new building will go on the parcel. So as far as the findings of fact, that a variance would not be contrary to public interest. Adherence to the terms of the ordinance wouldn't prevent him from constructing the accessory structure, but it would not be able to be as large as he needs and has requested. The intent of the ordinance is to control the size and number of accessory buildings in order to minimize the impact on neighboring parcels. And this one proposed structure would replace 4 smaller ones. The parcel is on the corner of the block and does not have a vegetative buffer or fencing. The requirements within the UDO pertaining to accessory structures apply to all properties in the vicinity, and adherence to the terms of the ordinance would result in the inability of Mr. Emmond to construct that structure, the combined garage and storage building that he's proposing. It is intended to replace 4 smaller structures, and it will match the house. So, as I said, the only variance he needs is for the size. So that concludes staff's report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for city staff from members of the board?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Elaine, was there any public, we don't have too many people here, so obviously you couldn't receive too many calls, but was there any outcry?
I got a couple of phone calls of people just wanting to know why what the sign was referring to, and when I told them, they didn't have a problem with it.
So no disagreement, but just curious inquiries.
That's correct.
And you made a mention with the new proposed structure that's going to be replacing 4 smaller units.
That's correct.
You made a reference, I'm not sure if I heard it right, but it was going to be matching, was it? It was going to be built to match that housing?
Yeah, it would be designed, it would be clad in white siding and have a black shingle roof, just like the house does. And let me see, it was that right now the 4 structures have a total area of 1,108 square feet, and then this new building would be 1,200 square feet. So you're just adding, what is that, less than 100 square feet difference. But it would be all combined into one building instead of
Is there
spread
a
over.
maximum allowed?
Well, the maximum allowed based on the size of the house, the property card said the house is about 2,400 square feet, so about a 600 square feet would be the maximum permitted for a storage shed. And then a detached garage is also permitted, but he's combining the both into one structure.
Okay, so he's going to categorize this as a detached,
It's a combined detached garage and storage building.
and which would the allowed square footage on the combined be?
The ordinance isn't real clear on it. We generally would go with the size of a detached garage, which is around 780 square feet.
Okay. And the maximum amount of the storage was 600.
That's correct.
So combining, they're about 1,180, and looking at 1,200 right now.
Well, it'd be about 1,300 combining so yeah, it would be right around that same amount.
And he only needs 1,200.
That's what he's asking
square feet.
for, yes.
Okay, so now would we have to grant him a variance for that as well, or are we just granting him a variance for the setback wrong?
No, we're just granting a variant, you're just looking at a variance for the overall size.
Overall size.
He's good for setbacks and compatibility.
Gotcha. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poston. Are there any questions for city staff from members of the board? All right, there being none, thank you very much. The board will now hear from the applicant. Does anybody here wishes to speak on behalf of the applicant? You're good as it stands? Okay. All right. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak for or against the variance request? All right. That concludes the public comment session. Are there any questions for the applicant from members of the board? Okay, sir, if you don't mind speaking on behalf of yourself. If you don't mind, step up to the microphone, state your name clearly. I'm going to swear you in.
My name is Brian Emmon.
Mr. Emmett, do you promise that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth?
I do.
All right. Go ahead, sir.
This building, your building,
Yes, ma'am.
can it be seen? And you live on a corner lot, so I know
Yes,
it can
ma'am.
be seen. But can it be seen like from the front of your house? If you're looking at the front of your house,
So
could
the
you see
front of the
that
house, it's a little bit strange because originally the house was built to face Gregg Avenue. Somewhere along the way, somebody had to readdress to Franklin. And so now Franklin would technically be the front of the house. So if from Gregg, it would be behind the house. From Franklin, it would be to the right of the house and could be seen. So the way that we have it designed is for the pitch of the roof to be exact matching to the house. So the A-frame essentially faces Franklin, and this new building, it would do the same thing, so everything would match together.
Okay, and you have a it'll have a garage, right?
It will be a garage workshop combined, storage, garage storage combined. Right now, I have a garage that used to be attached by a small 4-foot roof. They called it attached, but took the roof off, so then it became detached. And then we had a storage building, and there was already a storage building there, and so we've added all this, and we just want all that gone, right? We want the garage, we want gone. In that picture, the garage is the one that's in the red color that says remove. You can see it takes up the back of the house, so we can't even really see the yard from the house either. So we want to get that out of there. The tent I had to put up temporarily because my 17-year-old I'm working on a vehicle for, I had nowhere to put it because everything else, we've got tools and furniture and everything else in these other buildings. So we were trying to get something we could put everything in and be able to use it without having to have all this stuff because we really hate having it there. It's horrible, and I think it's bad for the neighborhood as well, just the way that it looks.
And the new building would go
The new building would be in the
farthest corner
green.
in the yard?
Yes, ma'am.
Or the back? Okay. All right, thank you.
And right now, what you're telling us, that's currently the side of the house, because Franklin is now your front.
Yeah, so if you look at Franklin Drive, the original house was facing Greg, and it was addressed to
I think I
Greg.
see
And I'm not sure, I imagine it had something to do with school, but the person that owned it before us, or a couple people before us, was an attorney. And I think they had it rezoned to get into a different school district, is how that, or readdressed to get it, because our property, for a long time, our side, you go to Wilson. The other side of the street, or Greg, goes to West Florence. So we've raised 3 girls in that home. One of them went to West Florence and graduated. One started at West Florence and then went to Wilson. And then the baby, we sent to Wilson. So yeah, I think that's what it had to do with the address changes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's strange for sure.
Okay.
But from a zoning standpoint, we would consider the front of the house being on Greg, so this would be in the rear yard.
Rear, okay. Wow, okay.
I mean, I was just looking at it, considering as if that was the house faced Franklin, and it technically would still kind of qualify. It's in the side, would be considered in the side yard, because there would be no backyard looking at it that way. But it is within roughly the plane of the house. So, but to keep things neat, I would just consider that the backyard.
Right.
Okay, so going back to kind of like sort of what I was asking, or what she was asking, facing the house from Gregg Avenue.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you be able to see the unit from behind the house?
No.
No. You
Not
still
unless
wouldn't
you're
be
at the corner or on Frank.
able- Okay, you still would be,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, from Greg you wouldn't be able to see it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Are there any other questions for the applicant from members of the board? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a comment.
Yes, sir.
For the owner, how long have you lived in this house, resided here?
2007.
2000, okay, so pushing 2 decades.
Yeah, a long time.
So, we're moving 4 structures for one. I'm surely if your neighbors could see exactly what you're doing, there would be a lot more positive feedback.
Yeah,
And,
I asked the neighbors actually before we embarked on this. I talked to the neighbors and they're like, "Great." They were fine with it. So they had no issues, because I just want to know, was I going to face any obstacles before I paid the application fees and, spent money on plans and all this sort of stuff. I just wanted to, see what the neighborhood thought about it. But yeah, they've been more than supportive about it. So
Well, I just wanted to point that out, and that was a great thing to kind of feel out there and test out the neighbors and see what everybody else was thinking. So
Thank you.
I wanted to make that a point.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Poston. Are there any other questions for the applicant from members of the board? All right. Thank you, Mr. Timmy.
Thank you.
As previously asked, there is nobody here who wishes to speak for or against the variance request. The chair will now entertain a motion to either approve or deny the variance request.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the
Okay.
variance request based on the following issues to be considered. That a variance from the terms of the Unified Development Ordinance would not be contrary to the public interest where owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provisions will, in an individual case, result in an unnecessary hardship. Adherence to the terms of the ordinance would not prevent the owner from constructing an accessory structure, but it cannot be as large as he requested. Granted that the 4 units being removed will be replaced by the 1 larger structure. Number 2, that the spirit of the Unified Development Ordinance will be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done. The intent of the ordinance is to control the size and number of accessory buildings in order to minimize the impact on neighboring parcels. This 1 structure proposed will replace 4 other detached structures. Number 3, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. This parcel is on the corner of the block and has no vegetation or buffering fencing. The lot is similar in size and shape to other corner lots within the area. And number 4, that these conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. Most lots in this neighborhood are also similar with other older, numerous detached structures. Number 5, that because of these conditions, the application of the Unified Development Ordinance to this particular property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property as follows. Adherence to the terms of the ordinance would result in inability of the owner to construct the accessory structure he is proposing, which is intended to replace 4 other standing structures. That the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of this variance. The proposed structure is intended to replace 4 smaller structures and will match the house in colors and material.
All right, thank you, Mr. Poston. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Ms. Singley. All those in favor of approving the variance request signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. The variance request is approved. There being no other items on this evening's agenda, are there any updates from city staff or members of the board?
Nope, we're good.
All right. Mr. Edmond, got anything you want to throw on the record?
Thank you.
All right. Well, we thank you for supporting not just one, but 2 high schools in Florence District 1.
I have to say my heart is with Wilson, just for the record.
I understand. And if any of you suffered through mistuning, she's that tall, that big of an ego. I'm sorry, that's my mother. So anyway, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make the motion to adjourn.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. This evening's meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons.
Thank you, sir.
Very well humor.